This is Horror Podcast.
Welcome to This is Horror, a podcast for readers, writers, and creators. I'm Michael David Wilson, and every episode alongside my co-host Bob Pastorella, we chat with the world's best writers about writing, life lessons, creativity, and much more. Today on This is Horror, I am welcoming back Josh Malerman for part 2 of our conversation. And this is one of these conversations that you can listen to in any order. The previous episode, 633, was part 1. This is part 2, but we are really just delving all across the board in terms of creative writing, inspiration, and the new Josh Malerman book, Watching Evil Dead. He's best known for writing horror, including his books Bird Box, Incidents Around the House, Goblin, and A House at the Bottom of a Lake, which was originally published by This is Horror. So with that said, a quick advert break, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Cosmovorous, the debut cosmic horror novel by R.C. Housen, is now available as an audio experience. Featuring an original dark synthwave score, this story will take you to the next level of terror. Come hear the story that readers are calling Barker Meets Lovecraft, a phantasm-style cosmic horror adventure, and a full-bore, unflinching, nihilistic nightmare. Cosmovorous, the audiobook by R.C. Housen. Come listen if you dare.
It was as if the video had unzipped my skin, slunk inside my tapered flesh, and become one with me.
From the creator of This is Horror comes a new nightmare for the digital age, The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. After a teacher receives a weirdly arousing video, his life descends into paranoia and obsession. More videos follow, each containing information no stranger could possibly know. But who's sending them, and what do they want? The answers may destroy everything and everyone he loves. The Girl in the Video is The Ring meets Fatal Attraction for the iPhone generation. Available now in paperback, ebook, and audio.
Okay, here it is. It is Josh Malerman on This is Horror. So, last time we were talking about your dilemma as to what to work on after Incidents Around the House. But you now know what you're working on post Watching Evil Dead. But I wonder, was that decision even harder? Because it's like now you've written, a book that people are arguably calling the most scary book, the scariest book that has been out in the last few decades. Changed genres, invented a genre, and you've then followed it up with this inspirational writing book on the most pivotal night of your life. So where on earth do you go from there? And was that a difficult decision, or was it almost liberating? Because it's like, well, all bets are off now. I could go anywhere, which means any decision is a good one.
Like I felt like when I take like my favorite bands, like if an obvious example would be like Nirvana Unplugged, right? So let's call Watching Evil Dead Nirvana Unplugged in terms of a career arc. Once they did that, anything goes after that. They can do anything they want. They could make like the trashiest album, the most produced album. They can make an acoustic album that's like properly recorded and not live or something. Well, Unplugged is properly recorded, but you know what I mean. And like, but what a door that opened for them. He passes away or dies soon after, But what a door that opened, because like it was almost like wiping the slate clean in a way. And you can argue the Beatles did that with the White Album. This kind of thing. That's what this felt like. It felt like to try to out scare incidents was like, that way lies madness. Like, don't even, why are we, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm gonna, hey, Allison, can you stand over there in this devil mask and turn, I want to write by a lantern light. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? Like, let's not, let incidents around the house breathe in its own space. And to follow it up directly with like a book like Goblin, let's say, Goblin would seem like maybe too light in comparison. So we talked about this before, and you wisely said you thought this was the right way to go because it's like, it's letting incidents still have its time. It's so different from incidents that it's not stepping on its feet in any way. And so now it feels like after this, what comes next is almost like act 2 or whatever it is of a career or something. And so again, I have a fantasy of the non-fic 6. That's what I'm calling it. I make these silly, deals with myself. Like, you got to write 6 of these now. Okay. Well, that's what I want to do now. I want there to be eventually be a box set of semi-slim, like 200-page each nonfiction books. All right, and we'll hopefully, oh my God, pepper a career with them as we go. But let's be smart about that. Let's use them when it feels like it's time to wipe the slate. Okay, incidents is breathing in its own space. Let's turn this way and do something that is nothing like it at all. And that doesn't mean like let's do a flat out comedy. Although actually that would be a good idea too. And you know who did this better than anyone ever did is Bob Dylan. And with the idea of like reinventing yourself right at a moment when it seems like everyone wants Blonde on Blonde Part 2, and it's like, nope. It's John Wesley Harding. It's like the most like stripped down, sort of like simple, and you're like, wow, is there even electric guitar on this album? And he was and is like a master at that. I think Bowie was like that as well. The Beatles were obviously, the Beatles are a little exceptional because it seems like every album was a completely new universe or something. But like Pink Floyd is good at that too, where in other words, all my heroes, they reinvent themselves as they go, man. And if you're, it's interesting to me that like The Who, the Beatles, all these bands, they would put out like 2 albums a year and they'd be so different from each other. And then a band like The Strokes put out their first album and the second one didn't come out till like 2.5 years later, and it sounded a lot like their first one. What I think happens there is that you almost get married to like, this is our identity. That one album we have out. Now years have passed. That's our identity. This is how we made an album. This is what we do. Where the Beatles were like, wow, we just made that. Let's make something different. Now they've stretched. Well, now we can do anything. Nirvana doing Unplugged. Anything can follow. And I feel the same way here. But there's also this happened. Since writing Watching Evil Dead, I've already written 2 novels. And now this is number 3. So the one that followed it is like a big one for me. It's about 500 pages about like a vaudeville troupe, which I think I told you about this idea. And man, I was hanging out with Jonathan Lees. This is a great story. And we were at a horror convention. And I told him the idea for this vaudeville book. And then he's like, oh man, this is really good. What are you calling it? And I'm like, I'm calling it vaudeville. And he goes, that's terrible. He goes, that's the worst title you could give that. I'm like, oh shit, you're right. Okay, you're right. So when I started writing, I was like, okay, and now it's called The Frauds of Phantasma. And I'm really excited about that one. And that one may be coming out in 2 years from now, The Frauds of Phantasma. It's a vaudeville troupe that starts experiencing success beyond their wildest dreams, and there's a figure in the audience at every one of their shows, no matter where they play. And it's not the devil. Don't think that way. It's more interesting than that. And I love that one. But then the book I wrote after that is the one that's coming out next year. And then now I'm working on this one, this Irish one, because Alice and I went to Ireland and I fell madly in love with the place. I think this is my first book ever without one tie to Michigan. I think this Irish, I was going through them. I think it's the first one I've ever written that has no tie whatsoever to Michigan. Not even like in Black Man Wheel, they're from Detroit. In what's the one that I was thinking of that like almost makes it out, but it doesn't? Ghoul in the Cape. They started in New York City and worked their way across the country, but they stop in Michigan for a pivotal thing, and that's where the Cape is from. So there's a major connection there. This is the first one ever where there's like I don't think the word Michigan's going to be in it, and that's kind of liberating too, you know. So where to go next? Well, geez, here we are on book 3 of that.
Yeah, and the Frauds of Phantasma. I mean, that just hearing the title gives a kind of almost 80s vibe to it. You know,
Yeah.
that 80s nostalgic kind of esoteric horror, I suppose, in a way. So,
Oh, I love that one so much, man, because think about it. It's exactly what you were saying before. It's almost like I Trojan horsed comedy into it because it's a vaudeville troupe, but it's a
Right.
horror story that happens to a vaudeville troupe, but their jokes have to be funny, I hope. My God, right? So, like, it was almost like I Trojan horse, like, oh, I can be like funny here in the same book where the goal is legitimately scary. Yeah, Frauds of Phantasma is a favorite one of mine.
Yeah, and I'll have to say, if you ever do decide to just write a full-on comedy, if you need a first reader, if you
Okay.
need if you want to bounce ideas, then please come to
Right
me.
on,
I
right
am
on.
here for
I
comedy
really,
discussions.
it really meant something to me what you said before, where you were like, "No, but I'm a funny dude." Like that really meant something to me what you said. Like, thanks for expressing that, and I bet listeners felt the same way I do, which is like, right, when I'm writing, like, hey man, I'm this kind of guy. It's okay, be this kind of guy. Yeah, it was nice to hear you say that about yourself before. Like that, I think I needed to hear that or something.
I think that, that there's a lot within art and creativity where we can be afraid to fully embrace who we are, but it it's bullshit. You should embrace who you are. And there's always that tendency to compare yourself to writers who you aren't, which I think actually right at the end of watching Evil Dead, and I can't even remember if it's in the afterword rather than part of the main story, but you're saying, Charles Dickens was this, Edgar Allan Poe was that. That everybody,
Let me
ha-
find that.
yeah,
Yeah,
you need to read that part.
yeah, that's the part where my dad says, "Oh, I wish I could have sang." I'm like, "Why couldn't you?" That part, and then I'm like, come on, where are you?" Right, it's yeah, Dad. Are you not as quippy as Oscar Wilde? But neither was Edgar Allan Poe. So are you not as frantic as Edgar Allan Poe? But neither was Virginia Woolf. Are you not as troubled as Virginia Woolf? But neither was Paul McCartney. Are you not as fluid as Paul McCartney? But neither was Dee Dee Ramone. Are you not as punk as Dee Dee Ramone? But neither was Charles Dickens. Are you not as traditionally skilled as Charles Dickens? But you hate traditionally skilled. Are you not as Southern as Faulkner, bilingual as Nabokov, poetic as Toni Morrison, or even Jim Morrison? But don't you see, none of these people had what another had, and each had their own way with words. And so it's like, so for someone to say like, "Oh, I'm not, I'm no Toni Morrison." Well, oh yeah, no, Nabokov wasn't any Toni Morrison either. Like, and she wasn't him. And so and I mean, those are two of the most brilliant, minds we've ever heard. So it's so totally right. And it's like, be who you are, but I think it's possible to be who you are and still have a super varied career, because who you are is many things.
That's it. And the subtitle is Unearthing the Radiant Artist Within. I misquoted that earlier as embracing the radiant artist within, but that's because that's the message that I'm getting. Yes, you have to unearth that artist. That's step 1, but step 2 is to embrace the artist, to love the artist, to
Yeah.
be at peace with that.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the main thread of the book is, early on, I mean, obviously, this, early on, the narrator. Jesus. Early on, I am kind of like the thought comes to mind, like, what does the artist deserve? And I know Michael alluded to this earlier. The question like comes to mind, what does the artist deserve? And then it's like, oh, who cares? Da, 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 da. But the question keeps coming back, keeps coming back, keeps coming back, keeps coming back. And like through this stoned and drunk like typhoon of a night where like the other couple are on like their last night and Allison and I are like using the word baby like Smurfs use the word Smurf, like, baby, can I baby, 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 oh, baby, baby, while these two are like about to like kill each other in front of us. And, you know, I don't know, man. It's like that. You can almost argue that question is the plot of the book. You can almost argue that's the spine of the book. What does the artist deserve? It becomes a diving board it's got to be every chapter. It becomes like a diving board in every chapter from which I guess I can talk about the night and writing in general and all this like stuff. And I think, man, and I don't think I'll ever, again, we were talking earlier, if there's no greater feeling than finishing a novel, then there's no budget to that experience. There's no budget to writing a book. I understand you have to find time if you have kids and that's not what I mean. I mean, you don't have to pay a freaking cameraman and a soundstage and whatever, a photographer, or whatever it is. There's you and a piece of paper. And if there's no budget to writing a book, then that means it doesn't cost, quote unquote, cost anything to eventually get to what I have found to be the greatest experience I've ever had in my life. So what else are we talking about beyond that? Anything beyond that, I don't want to say gravy because that almost sounds like ungrateful. Anything beyond that is like something to be like crazy grateful for. Like these theatrical readings we're doing, movies being made, book deals, all the unbelievable. But nothing is as great as finishing the novel. Nothing is as great as finishing the work of art itself. I can say that. Well, in my experience, I can say that as someone who has felt that 41 times now. And it doesn't cost, and it's $0 to make that happen. It takes a lot of time and a lot of madness. No money. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think, and I've said this kind of thing before, but there's almost an irony that if you make finishing the novel, if you make writing the novel the goal in and of itself, then actually these other things like the publishing deals, the agents, the film deals, you kind of multiply your chances of having that happen, rather than if you start off and you're like, I'm writing this because I want to get rich, because I want a New York Times bestseller, because I want it to be made into a movie. Like I feel not just other people, but, and this might sound a little bit woo-woo, but almost the art itself can tell if you're not being sincere.
No, that, first of all, I've never heard someone call it woohoo. Is that like an English thing to say woohoo?
I'm not sure.
Because like this all sounds a little like Wavy Gravy or a little like woohoo.
So you would say Wavy Gravy? I've never heard Wavy Gravy. We are having a cultural connection here of Wavy Gravy and woo woo.
Yeah, I 100% agree. 100% agree that like it knows. It freaking knows. And you know who else knows? Dude, I even believe that of Facebook posts. Like if I if I'm feeling particularly like energized about something and I post it, that post gets more attention and quote like likes and all that bullshit, whatever, more than like one that I may post that actually has more relatable information or whatever. Like I can actually feel the energy in that, like the transfer of energy. You don't think you can feel that in a book? And you don't think that the book feels you? I mean, of course it does. Yeah. I'm that's not too woohoo for me. That's like I live in woohoo. I'm like Cindy Lou Who I live with Cindy Lou Who in woohoo.
This episode's just gonna be called Wavy Gravy. That's what I'm taking away from this. Wavy Gravy. Is that your thing? Is that American?
an old hippie singer from like the 60s, you know? It's like
Okay.
this is all like, you know, like artsy fartsy, wavy gravy, you know what I mean? Like this is all like, yeah, you
Yeah.
know.
See, artsy fartsy, I know. Wavy gravy, though, that's new to me, but an awesome name for a psychedelic band, I think. Oh my goodness.
There's a sense or something with watching Evil Dead of like I saw this one, I don't know, I always say girl, but then she's a woman, but okay, so I saw this one woman. I'm friends with her online. She read Watching Evil Dead, and she wrote a really, really wonderful review. And then she said, "This is the most wholesome book I've ever read." And I was like, wholesome? That is super interesting. And I think that there's a side of me that maybe when I was younger or something, if I saw wholesome, I would have been like, no, what does that mean? Don't say wholesome. You know, I'm not, what am I, Tom Hanks or something? You know what I mean? And then, and then like, she's right though. She's freaking right. And I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, Watching Evil Dead is wholesome because it's like, it's like a love letter to writing and to Allison and to getting drunk and stoned with your friends and watching a movie, you know? Like that's what I would hope happens from the book is that it renders a seemingly everyday occurrence or every now and then, whatever, like a normal, a common occurrence, watching a movie with friends, renders it heroic. Like that night was more pivotal for me than, you know, when Alice and I went to Istanbul. But if I was telling someone like, oh, Alice and I watched Evil Dead with, you know, her cousin and girlfriend one night, oh, Alice and I have been to Istanbul, like, oh, what was it like? No one would ever say, oh, what was it like about watching the movie with, you know, with her cousin, right? What was the night like? Did you have any giant thoughts? So I would hope that watching Evil Dead sort of renders our like just everyday things heroic. Like it's there to be, you know, celebrated. It's there. It's happening. And what you and I are doing right now, I could write a book about. And it
I
would be
mean,
about all the books that you've been writing. And I would take the transcript of what we're saying. And then I would like dive off of sections. And wow, you know, he's written 8 books. We've been talking to each other for like 11 years now at various points in both of our careers and and Ryan Lewis and all this like stuff. There would be all these like things to like discuss between you and I or about you and I just from this conversation. Like this conversation is heroic.
yeah, and you mentioning Ryan Lewis, I mean, again, at the end of watching Evil Dead, you're thanking people, you're talking about your team, you're talking about how, like, with writing it's less you having a team and all of us together being the team. That's kind of the distinction. And so as you were listing all the various people, I was kind of thinking, who's in my team? Who's part of my story?
Okay.
And you know,
Well, no, go on. I don't mean to interrupt.
both Ryan Lewis and Wayne Alexander and yourself have been pivotal parts of that. You know, when I wrote the girl in the video, and then I got like the movie interest coming in, and then I wrote to Max, I wrote to you. Meeting Ryan, you know, you and Max putting me in connection with Ryan, that changed my life. Like Ryan has made my life better. And
Yeah.
I
Yep.
said this recently in a newsletter, but I've never actually expressed it in a podcast, or nobody's heard me say it. But I mean, if it wasn't for Ryan, if it wasn't for some of the things that happened with the girl in the video movie deal, which I haven't even publicly properly spoken about because there's all sorts of NDAs and things like that. But it came about at the point where I was going through the worst time of my life, the custody battle and the divorce. And without that happening, I don't know what would have happened. Like, I couldn't have financed the divorce. Because of that, I had, you know, the financial means to finance the divorce and to be
Wow.
able to see my daughter. I might not have seen her
Wow.
again if
That
that
is
hadn't happened.
wow. Yeah, that's wow.
Which is
Uh,
a big
I
moment
was
to drop
say,
in.
like, yeah, Ryan's changed my life too, but like, and he haven't. Like, that's to say the least. But hold on. This is an important moment. Let's have let's do a fireball shot to Ryan Lewis.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've only got coffee at the moment, but it's a
Are you
good.
not drinking these days?
It's a. Well, the time differences, Josh. It's like it's 8 in the morning, and like to kind of fast forward, like my life changing, and there being different seasons and things. So that season of divorce, of the custody battle, that was a low. Although ironically, creatively, it was a high. It was such a weird time because I'm having all these terrible things going on in my personal life, but then I'm getting movie interest in the girl in the video. I'm just like feeling like, wow, I'm at a moment here with my career.
What you wrote was great. Like, there's that too. Like, it's like the confidence in the actual book itself, and this stuff is happening from it. Like, I keep going back to this word, but there's identity there. We're like,
Yeah.
I know that, or I just, whatever. I believe Frauds and Phantasma is great. I believe Incidents is great. It doesn't, whatever. So if I run into a problem, like throughout the day, even a serious one, I have that. I have Bird Box. I have Goblin. I have Unburied Carol to like be like, we can get through this. You know what I mean? And I don't even know if that makes linear sense. It's not like, oh, because I wrote Spin a Black Yarn, I can get through this bad time. No. It's more of like it gives you a more pep or a backbone or whatever it is. Like, and I know what you mean. But what you described, the actual financial side, that's wow. Yeah, that is intense. I mean, I guess Ryan changed my life in that way too. But we just got married, Allison and I, and Ryan Lewis came to the wedding. He
Hell
flew
yeah.
he flew in from LA to a part of Michigan that is 10 hours north of where I am right now. That's how remote it is. 10 hours north of Detroit. And Ryan flew in. I mean, it's like I dropped a friend off at the airport after the wedding, and I thought it was like an office. I'm like, is this the airport? It was like a building that's like maybe like twice the size of your house, you know? And I'm like, this is the whole, yeah. They're like, yeah, there's like 2 flights a day or whatever, you know. Ryan Lewis flew in with his wife, and so did my agent, Kristen. And that was just like, this is unfreaking believable, man. It's just unbelievable, man. The whole thing. One thing I want, well, you go on if you have another like question or topic, but a thing that I was thinking about or that I wanted to bring up about watching Evil Dead was the section on the 4 V's. I don't know if you remember this or not. Maybe you do. Of course you do. You remember everything. But the victory, validation, vindication, and vengeance, and how I sincerely try to keep the 4 V's away from writing. So I never want any success from the books to feel like vengeance on someone else, someone that didn't believe in you or something. Oh my God, there's like 350 million people just in this country alone. There's going to be some people that don't believe in you. You know what I mean? So it's a dark vengeance, although it's satisfying. It's kind of a dark feeling, right? There's a darkness there. And I never want the books to feel like vengeance. I also never want the success to feel like validation, because to myself, I never want to be like, well, I knew I could do it. I knew I could become like a bestseller. No, validation. What do you mean? Like, writing it was validation. When you finished it, it was validation. Victory, I never want the books or anything to feel like a victory over someone else. Right? So like, if it is a bestseller, you got a movie deal, and then this other guy or girl in the scene, like theirs haven't been made into a movie. Oh my God, I'm so, I never wanted to feel like victory. So victory, validation, vengeance, and what was the fourth? What was it? What did I say? Validation, vindication, which is essentially an amalgamation of the other ones. The same thing, which is like I never want to feel vindicated by, like how anything that happens after finishing the book. I never want to feel like, it showed him. You know what I mean? like never. No, never. Even if there was a guy or a girl or a wife or a mother or a friend or a dad or whatever, or fellow writer that said like, you're going nowhere. And this is something that Allison like taught me for sure, is that however someone is with you, that's how they are with everyone. And it's like maybe the greatest goddamn lesson I've ever been taught in my entire life. Because when we first met, there was someone that I was like, oh my God, they're being like that. And they're like, and she was like, no. But if he's like that with you, that's how he is with everyone. So now and she's right. You start to see that. You're like, oh, right. This isn't like a personal attack. This is how this person sees the world. And so now transfer that to somebody that would be in that dark of a place to say to you, you're not going anywhere with your writing, right? Like you got to be in a real messed up place to say something like that. Real messed up place to tell someone that they're not going anywhere with their writing, that there's something they're working on isn't going. Like that's maybe the worst thing you can say to someone. So what Allison taught me was that's the kind of person that would say that to other people too, not just you. And when you see that, now all of a sudden you almost feel like a little sympathy for the person. Instead, you're like, oh man, you are in a place, man, And I think, a lot of people online, we could all use to sort of avoid the 4 V's online. I mean, the 4 V's are rampant online, vengeance, vindication, validation, victory, right? I mean, it's like, gotcha, right? And it's like, well, hold on, let's just wait. The book itself, I keep coming back to this, but that's what it is. I finished the book itself. That's it. That's everything. Anything on top of that, like, wait. I'm happy that I'm like, took the lead on like a fellow horror author. Like, what are we talking about here? That first of all, that guy or someone else is about to take the lead on you. So there's no reason, there's no room to me for any of those things. That's not to say that there isn't room for like negative thoughts. Oh my God, come on. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, this isn't, I'm not Pollyanna, you know what I mean? Like, I understand. And that's also, in watching it with that, the difference between the optimist and the naive. The naive person literally doesn't know the score. The optimist knows the score just as well as the pessimist does, but chooses to react with, okay, we can work with this, or we can get through this, or we can write on top of this. So I had a question for you. You said when you were going through your crazy period, the art was really good. So are your memories of writing during that period like sort of like frantic, emotional? Like, what are your memories of writing during that period?
Oh my goodness. I mean, so during that period, I mean, first of all, I kind of decided, so anything I could do to be able to maximize my chances of seeing my daughter or to make the situation better, I would do that at the start of every day. But once it was done and it took an awful lot of training and it didn't always work, it would be like, well, that's done. I've done everything I could do. So now I can't fret, as crazy as it is, because I didn't even know where she was at some point, but I can't obsess. I can't keep thinking about this. I need to know that I've done everything in my power to make the situation better. So now I'm going to use the time for me. And for me, that is creating art. That is writing. That is like, if not, I mean, I was going to say it's my happy place. It's a bit of a simplistic kind of way of putting it, but that's almost the place where I belong. That is my calling. That is why I'm here. And so, I channeled a lot of my time into writing. So it was a very productive time. I know that Rob Olson of the Arc Party, he asked me, was it cathartic. I mean, I don't know. Something about that word doesn't quite capture what it was. I wasn't doing it to get rid of the pain. I think I was doing it in spite of the pain. I was doing it because it was a good thing for me. And actually, during that period, so there were two books that I was working on. The first was this one that I mentioned that I'm 60,000 words into, but I felt a lot of the themes and the subject matter was stemming from the situation that I was in. And the reason that I parked it was I thought I'm too close to it. Like you would have been too close to watching Evil Dead if you'd put that out the next day. And then the one that I put a lot of my attention into after was Daddy's Boy, the most joyful
Right.
experience that I've ever had. And I think I wrote this kind of light, if we're to call it that, book, and this funny book because it was a way for me to just hold on to my joy, for me to have happiness within this terrible moment. So sometimes when things are lighter and more joyful, I'll write about the darker things. But if things are really, really dark in my personal life, it can sometimes be more liberating to write about something just a little bit lighter. But then Daddy's Boy, it's not a light book in terms of themes. I mean, in a way, there is a comparison to the Greasy Strangler that if you want, you can see it as this ridiculously absurd book with a lot of jokes. It's very playful. But actually, if you look at both Daddy's Boy and the Greasy Strangler, if you look deeper, they're about exploring father-son dynamics. They're about fractured relationships. I see these two
Yeah,
pieces as very much in conversation with one another.
I love that. I feel like Jizzly Bear fits into there as well, by
Which,
the way.
which I was going to mention, which we will return to. We're not going to have this without Jizzly Bear.
Yeah, Allison and I were talking, and like we're like, it comes up like Josh, you bring it up everywhere. Like we were at our wedding. The photographer was like, smile, and I'm like, man, I can't, I can say something funny, and then she did actually, and then I was like, I told everyone there, if you want to make me like genuinely smile, quote Jizzly Bear. And so then people were, and it was totally working. So did you feel like, because I had an experience recently where there was something heavy going on in the life stuff, family stuff. And I mean, like, I was like peaked, worried about some shit. Not about myself, but that doesn't matter, whatever. I was worried. And I'm rewriting a book and da da da. And I'm like, oh my God. Or I can't, let me just think, hold on, the months. No, I was writing the book. I wasn't done yet. And then I went back to rewrite it. And I was like, man, this is exceptional. This is exceptional. This is so focused and so on point. And at the time, it literally felt like I was like writing, like while like in a sauna, like the temperature was rising, like it was like I was like nervy, like the hairs on your other arm were standing up, like I was like edgy. I'm like, oh my God, I have to write for a couple hours. And then I read it later, and I was like, no, that's good, no, this is good. This is good. I wouldn't say that there's some correlation always, but it is interesting that can happen. It's interesting that you can be like completely the F freaked out and do good stuff. And not just like good, like emotional, like, like, oh, that was during his, angry period. So it's all like a yelling song. And like, no, not like an obvious. No, like you said, like this book is playful. And it was like, how, what? It was almost like, okay, this is all so crazy that I'm going to focus on this thing and make sure that it's right or something like that. Yeah, I've had that for sure.
Yeah, I think in a way we can create moments of our life that are not within reality through the story. So, okay, there's not a lot of light within my life at that point, but I can create some light through the art. It's almost a superpower to get a little bit wavy gravy on you again.
Not to be too woohoo. I've never heard woohoo before ever. That's now my phrase. I'm gonna use that everywhere, man. My friends are gonna be like, they're gonna be like, Josh always says woohoo.
But right, let's just. There's so many directions. We're almost at Jizzly Bear, but
I think
you
we're probably halfway through the interview right now. Do you feel like I'm right? I think this is a 3-hour. Are you starting to feel that way, or do you have to be somewhere?
we interrupted one of my thoughts earlier when I was talking about things kind of going full circle and seasons. So, I was in the dark period, but since then, like I think since the last time that we spoke, we have both got married. So
Yeah.
now, which is pretty funny, pretty crazy. But right now, so my wife is pregnant. So in an
Oh,
hour from now, we've got to be at an appointment. So I think we this probably isn't a 3-hour one, but we can probably do 2.5 hours. But I mean,
I'm like the worst influence. This is amazing for listeners. They're like, so you have to be at like a pregnancy like thing, and I'm like, hey man, let's do some shots. Hey man, let's go for 3
exactly.
hours. Hey man, Jizzly Bear, and you're like, hey, whoa man, it's 8 a.m. and I have a wife.
Yeah. So yeah. In fact, that is the answer as to why first of all, it's 8 a.m. So I don't typically drink at 8 a.m.
I don't typically either, but I would for you. I know you would for me too. If you didn't have to be somewhere in an hour, I bet you would have.
Exactly. Yeah. But as I need to drive to the
Right.
clinic, and also in Japan, like there's absolutely zero tolerance. You can't have any alcohol in your system. You know.
Hey,
Uh,
you know what?
to,
As
yeah.
horrifying as that sounds, it's not a bad rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So.
a horrifying rule, but also makes sense.
Right, yeah. So no, there are no shots being consumed at 8 a.m. now, 9 a.m. as time is always moving. But I mean, what what you said, wavy gravy.
That's my
What you
favorite
said,
part of the interview. What just happened?
yeah.
All right.
What you said about you were writing something and you were feeling at the time just you weren't sure if it was working. So I mean, writing this book with John Crinan, I could write a book on writing that book. There's been so many lessons. I think it's been the most kind of writing lesson book. The most that has been possibly my formative experience. We'll have to wait 10 years to be able to get perspective on it, but
Dude, I did the audiobook for Watching Evil Dead, and I honestly
nice.
felt like afterwards I could write a book called Reading Watching Evil Dead. Like,
Yeah,
like I was like, this could just keep going. like,
yeah,
like
yeah.
rewriting, reading, watching Evil Dead. Reacting to mom's reaction to rewriting, reading, watching Evil Dead. Like again, that's the once. Like this is one night. The book is one. I mean, I understand it's more, but it's one. It's really the whole platform is one night of watching movie with friends, and it feels like okay, that could be a book. And then once your mind goes there, like what can't? Like how the books are arranged on the shelf. I have a fantasy. I don't want. This is probably like a dark thing to say, but I have a fantasy of writing like a will in like a 500-page novel. Where it's like to this friend I leave charisma. To this friend I leave all the money. This guy would be pissed. The first one, and then to the no. But for real. Like I do see like what an idea for your last book, man. Like where it's a will. Like but it's your actual will. But it's 500 pages of like explaining like who you were and who these friends are and family in your life and what you're leaving. Like, why am I leaving this one copy to this one nephew? Because that's the one book that maybe got you started on the whole path to begin with, and maybe it would do him or a different one, and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so that this goes back to the whole idea that, right, the everyday thing, like what you're going to do in an hour, like you don't think you can write a book on what you're about to do in an hour? Like a meaning about pregnancy, wife, life, Japan. Just after doing this interview too, and then suddenly you start to see like, man, these are all heroic like moments, heroic in terms of like, it took focus, it took energy, it took spirit, it took intelligence, it took patience, whatever it is. Allison and I had the last 4 months were outrageous. We went to Ireland, premiered the documentary that I made, premiered it in Florida. We got married. I had like family trips. My brother got married. There was a funeral. There's more. There's 2 Wowtown shows, and I started to see. I started to count. There were like 12, 13, 14 sort of like major events happening. And I started to equate it with the 12 labors of Hercules. I started to say like, okay, so we're on number 3 right now. And the calendar looked insane to me at the time. Insane. And I'm like, okay, well, it's the 4th labor of Hercules. And in other words, he had to complete these 12 labors to be like a hero to Zeus or whoever the hell it was. And I started to see it that way. So Ireland was the 6th labor, the 6th task of her. Labor sounds like you don't want to do it. The 6th task of Hercules. And then getting married was like the 11th task of Hercules, whatever. But what happened was, not only did I start seeing it in this sort of like awesome way, it was that I started to see the everyday things. Because even getting married, people get married and like people make a movie and they show it, and people go to Ireland, right? It wasn't like I went there and came back with a Gorgon's head, right? So it was like I started to see these sort of quote unquote everyday activities as heroic. And then what happened was the events that followed that revelation felt heroic. And I hope, again, that that's what watching Evil Dead does. I hope that it's like, you're like, we don't like a movie with friends can be more book-worthy or just as book-worthy as the trip to Istanbul.
And you having these 3 events, having the release of Watching Evil Dead, getting married, and the writing documentary premiere, all at around the same time.
Oh yeah, all within like a couple weeks, yeah.
They feel like they should be linked because they're all related. Was this serendipitous, or was there actual planning with the timing to make them?
The calendar was already like bananas, and then the doc got into a festival. And then they were like, can you do this date? And it was like, I'm like, oh God, there's no way we can do this. And I looked down and I'm like, actually, there's a week off there and we're supposed to be there for 3 days in the middle of that week. Yeah, we can do this. You know what I mean? Like it was like, so I guess that would be serendipitous then. Because it was like everything that came up like sort of like fit into the calendar. Like there was non-stop activity and event, and at the same time, there was room for more. I lost 18 pounds in that stretch, and I didn't work out.
You were just so active, or was that part of being stressed, or what was it?
No, exactly. That's why I said to Allison, I was like, I think that I've discovered that stress is the best diet, but it was more like, I think an object in motion tends to stay in motion, and it's like, like after the last Wowtown show, the release of Watching the Dead, that was freaking, you need to come to one of these, man. We got a big one coming up, next month in Connecticut at Storyfest in Westport, Connecticut, where we're doing incidents around the house. Wowtown, like the whole troop from Michigan, we're all going there together. And like, you got to come to one of these. You got to come to one of these because there is something like Like, I don't know that anyone else is doing what we're doing with this right now.
I mean, nobody launches a book like you do, but to call it a book launch is like, no, this is a theatrical production. You know, this is like, you know, Sam Raimi and the team remaking Evil Dead with Evil Dead 2. But
Yeah.
you know, part of the book watching Evil Dead is talking about what is Evil Dead 2? Is it a sequel? Is it a
Yeah.
remake? And, you know, I think in having these conversations in the book, you know, for me, I become another participant. You know, I'm having that conversation too, and I'm thinking about it. And so in a way, this book it's a playable book. You are a character. You are playing a character within this. And I mean, for me, I thought, well, it's not quite a remake. It's almost a tribute or a cover. And then I thought, you know what? It's a love letter. It is a love letter to the original Evil Dead. It's
Yeah.
riffing on some of the more extreme bits.
Amazing. That's amazing. I just said yeah as if I had thought of that. I had never thought of that. That's amazing. That's a great way of looking at that. Yeah, Allison and I had like a little sort of debate about that at the Q&A after, because the movie was screened after our reading, and we had Allison was like, and then Evil Dead 2 was a remake. I'm like, no. It wasn't a remake. And then she's like, but it is though. And I'm like, no, but it's not, you know. But she's like, but it is. It's like, you know, no. And then the moderator was like, oh, we opened a can of worms here. Are there any more questions? You know?
So, one of the first times that you spoke to me, or I think maybe it was the second time, you brought up Jizzly Bear. But at the time, you were like, you cannot put this in the episode. You cannot share the link. You cannot speak of this. And it's been really interesting to watch almost this Jizzly Bear evolution where you went from, I'm going to tell you privately, but this is between us, to then, okay, I'm going to allow it to be referenced in public interviews together. And now, when I got to this bit of the book, like I kid, it's like, yes, you have publicly mentioned Jizzly Bear in one of your books. So I want to talk about almost this
Man,
journey from
it is.
hiding to embracing the
Yes,
power of
that's exactly
Jizzly
what it
Bear.
was. It's even on my Wikipedia page now. It says filmography, Jizzly Bear, and the documentary that I made to all the books. And I'm like, yes. You know, Bird Box comes out. It's my first, not only is it my first book, it's with HarperCollins, it's with Kristen. Oh my God, right? And you could argue similarly to watching Evil Dead following incidents from the house. How to follow up like the, you know, most quote unquote commercially successful moment of your artistic life after you've written a dozen novels or more with Jizzly Bear, where you're throwing fake poo at each other in the woods, and you know, and then at the time there was this feeling of like, again, like the same fear that's in watching Evil Dead, like where is this career going? Not in a Dan Brown way, but just well, Dan Brown, that sounded funny with Jizzly Bear, but like not in a Dan Brown, but in any way, like where is this going? I don't know. So Jizzly Bear felt like, first of all, it's one of the top 5 artistic experiences of my entire life. There's 100% no doubt about that. But there was this sense of like, oh gosh, like what would HarperCollins think, or what would this, you know, da da da. And then over time, it kind of became like, what are we talking about here? This is like, is this any worse than Sausage Party? Is this any worse than like, you know, really any amazing John Waters flick? Is this any like what are we even talking? This like Jizzly Bear is brilliant, and Allison is absolutely brilliant in it. And then an interesting thing happened where I don't know exactly how they heard about it, but there's a group of people on Facebook, on Twitter at the time, who were like, Josh Malerman directed a movie called Jizzly Bear. We're going to watch this together. It was like a group of like 5 people. And I was like, oh boy. And I wrote like the people in the movie, I'm like, the bear is out of the cave. You know what I mean? I was like, and they're like, what do you mean? And I screenshot, I'm like, this group, this book club is watching Jizzly Bear tonight. And that night, Alice and I were out, and I'm like sweating, like waiting for like a reaction online. You know, I'm like talking to people and done, and I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh my god, what do they think about this? You know, what do they think about the poupée? You know, and then the reaction was that they had like the greatest, most hilarious time, and I was like, yeah, that's all this was the whole time. What was I? Why was I so serious? Like about keeping this under wraps or whatever. And then it became, all right, you know what? No, this counts. This is not only does it count, again, it's similar to the like feeling I get from the from Wowtown, the theatrical troupe, again, who does all the readings for the book launches and more. We just did one with Jonathan Jans, by the way, which was incredible. Because we've never done someone else's story before. We did one of his. And Jizzly Bear was the same thing because it's like a band. You know what I mean? It's like I wrote the song, but Allison's playing the lead guitar or singing. Allison's singing the song. You could argue in Jizzly Bear, and Jay is playing the drums, and you know this kind of thing. It's the group sort of theatrical troupe like effort of it. Like that's my favorite place to be. It's the same reason that when someone says to me like, what did you think of the movie adaptation of Bird Box? And I'm like, what did I think of it? It's like the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Like the band taught me like so much in terms of like playing with other people. Like I'm very used to writing the song, handing it off to the boys, and they make whatever music they want to make. I don't tell Chad what to play on the bass. Same thing with Bird Box. I wrote the song and Suzanne Bier and Sandra Bullock made the music, and Netflix made the music. Whether or not what they make is better or not than what I wrote, I still wrote the song. You know, there's times with the boys where I bring a song that's very, very little, like The Luck You Got. The Shameless theme song was super, super small. It was literally 5 keys lower. It was like, very little. And one of the members, Burko, was like, raise it a key, like kept saying that, add this. And all of a sudden it's this like bright rocker that becomes like a theme song. So, okay, it's better now than what I wrote, but I still wrote the song. And then you can argue the opposite has happened, where I wrote something where I heard like this amazing thing and it just came out kind of like this little thing and you're like, you know? Either way, I still wrote the song. So I'm used to that, not only used to that experience, it's my favorite experience. And Wowtown is like that. Jizzly Bear was like that. Playing in the band is like that. And also, it's becoming more and more like that with Del Rey. Where now we're talking about books like Watching Evil Dead and maybe possibly another nonfiction book somewhere after the next 2 like horror novels, that kind of thing. We're starting to feel like more like as the afterward said, more like this like team effort. Versus like just me alone. I'll write the song, but okay, they were like, hey, we want to put this like giant subtitle on. Oh, great. I wrote the song, you guys make the music. Here we go. And like, that's all attributable to playing in the band. And it's also a great feeling to be like, okay, you did your part and now Del Rey's doing theirs. And that doesn't mean, to say like now they have to do theirs. That means they're just doing theirs, just like Derek playing the drums. And like, to me, that's a super exciting situation to be in or something. I'm the furthest thing from a control freak that you can get in an artist. The furthest thing that you can get. Well, obviously Jizzly Bear's funny, but I wrote it, I set up the camera. I would be like, okay, go. And I would just watch them be hilarious and be like, that was great, guys. And they're like, should we do it again? I'm like, I guess. Yeah, sure. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you're going to top. That was hilarious. But yeah, do it again. You know? I'm the furthest thing from a control freak. In fact, I'd rather, I don't want to say delegate because that sounds like you're in control. I'd rather like we each play our part. Same thing with Wowtown. I told you, we got that awesome gig in Connecticut coming up. And I had to call each of the members and say, can you come do this? Well, Jim scores all the readings and even writes songs about the books and plays them. So I'm like, what if Jim can't be there? Like, what if Jim can't go to Connecticut? What do we do? I mean, he's literally the music of the whole show. And Allison's like, well, you could score it, right? Right, I could. And if he couldn't have gone, then I would, I guess. But it's the fact that Jim, and she knows this, it's the fact that Jim's doing that adds to the sort of band of merry pranksters, that adds to the sense of like, this guy wrote the book, that guy's doing the music, Allison's doing like the props and like all the the amazing, like impossible stuff. Janine and Lily are acting, James is doing magic. Like you like, that's the vaudeville troupe, and that, to me, that's where I feel most at home, is in like a band. And Jizzly Bear was 100% a band.
No, I totally get that. And I think we have quite a similar attitude when it comes to film adaptations. And I was pretty upfront with Ryan from the start. And then I've been working with Alec Frankel, who also works with Ross Jeffrey. And so with me, it's like, look, I've written the book, but in terms of what you want to do with the story and with the film, that this is like a collaboration, or this is a cover, this is your vision. So I'm not really a no person, at the most I might be a yes and.
No, I was kidding.
Nobody knows what we're laughing about now, because that is only visible to us on Zencaster.
That was the most inside joke possible. Yes, 100%. That's what watching Evil Dead is entirely about. Is that the whole payoff is writing the book. And so anything on top of that is not gravy or wavy gravy. The whole anything on top of that is just excitement that anyone wants to be involved at all. Like, I understand Stephen King and The Shining, okay, blah blah blah. And there have been like more recent examples too of guys who are like, oh, the movie. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, come on. I just can't fathom being upset about the fact that a book of mine is being adapted on any level. I just can't. Because if I was making the movie and a million if I was directing the movie and writing the movie, and a million studio people were telling me you have to do this or this, I could definitely get that. I can definitely get but somebody else is just adapting your book. I am 100% just grateful. The fact that Chad is playing bass on a song I wrote, grateful. The fact that Jay wore a pile of shit on his head for Jizzly Bear, grateful. Come on, man. What are we talking about here? The joy is in writing it itself. And once you recognize that you're never going to top that feeling, that if Stanley Kubrick got a hold of your book and made a movie, it wouldn't top the feeling of writing the book. Once you realize that, then what are we even talking about? It's liberating.
This is exactly it. And, this is a conversation that I've had with a number of people. And I was talking to Kev Harrison recently, and, both of us, we'd like to be picked up by bigger publishers. And, I think it's fine to say that's something we would like, but don't feel I need it. And
right.
He said, he hopes that my self-belief improves. And I said, well, my self-belief is here.
Right.
I totally believe in every single story that I've written. It couldn't be topped. And, that's the funny thing. And this is something we've spoke about before. It's something you mentioned in watching Evil Dead. Whether the story remains on my hard drive, whether I put it out with This Is Horror, whether Del Rey put it out, whether anything in between, it is the same story. And I believe in that story. And whether one of a person reads it or millions of people, it's still the same story. So it is a funny feeling to think whether, financially I stay the same or I get rich off a book. It doesn't alter the story. And this is
Right.
going back to the 4 V's and specifically validation. The trouble is when you need validation through other people. This is a good lesson in life generally, not just in art. Don't need the validation of others. Don't need external validation. Be happy, with what you have that be enough. But I think about it loads, how almost perception can change based on, how many sales did I get? How many Goodreads reviews did I get?
Right.
But
So I haven't looked at, so Incidents was book 13 that I had published. And so Watching with That is 14. I was a little nervous when Incidents was number 13. It sounded like extra, like freaky or something to me.
but it's so perfect. You didn't
No,
plan it, but that is book 13.
that's book 13. Yeah. Yeah. And I know that whole book, when we were like flying to Dublin for Incidents, I'm like, Incidents Around the House could be a cursed film. I'm a little worried about this flight, like, this is the exact kind of movie that could be a cursed film, But anyway, I have not looked at book sales or a single review since Unmarried Carol. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books ago. I haven't looked at a single book sale or a review on I've seen if if someone tags you in something, you see it, like the girl that said, the woman that said, Watching with That is wholesome. Like you can't help but see certain things. And I've seen like a Kirkus review, like that kind of course. I haven't looked at sales or whatever in however many books that is. Yeah. But Incidents is doing so well that I found myself like almost like excitedly like is it still doing so well or that kind of thing. So I did start looking not at reviews but in sales with Incidents, and then I would like call Ryan Lewis and be like, this is freaking insane, this one. Like Incidents just absolutely insane, by far the biggest release of my entire life. And it's like, so this is something that Jans and I talk about often, is like, if we go to Goodreads, oh man, it's not like the bad or something that didn't like it that bothers you. It's not like, oh, this guy can't write, or this is stupid, or this was predictable. Okay. It's the reviews that are like actually wrong. They're wrong. Like there was one about Unmarried Carol that was like, and of course, in the end, Moxie saves her. I'm like, no, wait, no, but he doesn't. He doesn't. She saves herself. Her and her mom building the casket that trampled from the ground. Like, no, he doesn't save her. He shows up later, And like those moments are real hard not to like jump in and be like, that's not what happens. Anyway, the whole point is that like one time Stephen King wrote this thing, you probably read this, where he's like, have you ever heard of da-da-da? And it was like a woman's name. And then we're expected to be like, no. And that is what we were like. And he was like, she was the best-selling novelist from like 20 to 1960 or something. Like the best-selling novelist in the world. And he was talking about himself, saying that he would eventually fall into obscurity as well. And we could all be like, no, you won't, because of the films and other things and different era. He wrote this before the internet stuff. But that did something to me. He was right. I didn't know the best-selling author in the world from 1920 to 1960. I never heard of her. Not only did I not know her or haven't read her, I never heard of her. And so you can go on to YouTube right now and find a band that has 400 million plays, literally, that you've never heard of. And even when you hit play, it's like some kind of thing you're not into, like Christian rock or whatever the hell it is, right? So you're like, this isn't like what at that point, what are plays? What are number of reviews? What are, you know what I mean? And so you just like heard this band, you're like, this is like, gee, oh my God, what am I listening to? 400 million. And you're like, okay, so what if I had 400 million reviews of my book. Like, does that mean that I'm good? So once you explode, eliminate, whatever, pulverize the number of views, likes, sales, these kind of things, it just keeps coming back to the same thing. It keeps coming back to the same thing. The gratification of finishing the book itself. You got rid of whether or not an adaptation is right or wrong. We got rid of the number of likes, the reviews, whether they're right or wrong. I mean, so it keeps coming back to the same thing, which is like, I wrote the book. That's all that matters.
That's it. I think you have to ask yourself, are you satisfied with the book? If the answer is yes, end of discussion. If the answer is no, well, okay. You can look at revising that. You can look at remolding it. You can put it in a position so that you are satisfied with it.
Or if you're not satisfied with it, then and you're like, that one, I didn't pull that one off. But the next one I will. Like, there's that brilliant book, Hitchcock Truffaut. Brilliant book where Truffaut goes through every single Hitchcock movie. So there's like 50 whatever of them there are. And a bulk of them are Truffaut saying like, I don't think that you pulled off what you said I was pull off here. And Hitchcock's like, no, I didn't. Da da da. And it's like, wow. So Hitchcock, the way you just said, and if you're not satisfied, I mean, Hitchcock felt that way with like, we're probably talking about 60% of his movies. And that's not just a factor of genius because he's a brilliant filmmaker. It's a factor of like, sometimes like you're not like, you didn't pull it off. That's okay. All of our favorites have lemons. All of our favorites. Stephen King has books that we're all like, oh God. And then, but he also has ones that we're like, oh boy, that's as good as it gets. And so why not expect the same thing of yourself? Meaning like if all your heroes have lemons, meaning crush yourself over writing something that you're not satisfied with?
Yeah. And if I bake a cake and that one doesn't turn out well, I'm not like, oh, fucking hell, fuck my life. This cake is, well, on to the next one.
Or if a joke doesn't land, right? But then sometimes it's just timing, right? It's like, especially with jokes, but sometimes it's just timing. You put out a book, like Watching Evil Dead. You put out a book and you're like, is this the right moment? At this current moment in time, there's a bunch of holy shit, banana shit happening in this country. Is this the right moment for like a book like this to connect? Maybe it's exactly the right moment, or maybe it's gonna, people are so upset and justifiably like, worried about shit where a book like this isn't gonna make sense to them right now. Does that change what you wrote? No. So there's timing also. You got to factor that in as well.
Well, speaking of time, we are almost out of time, but
right. Well, that's tough.
Yeah, but what I want to know is like to kind of finish. I mean, what did you learn about either writing or that night that you wouldn't have learned if you hadn't wrote the book?
Again, I think it's the fact that just a night of watching a movie with friends is an event, can be heroic, can be novel worthy. And I think, we all feel that. We've all felt that before. We've all had that experience where like, this was the greatest night of my life, this party, this date, this watching this movie with friends. But then actually, no, write that down. And then you start to see like, oh shit, this is actually as worthy of a novel as like War and Peace, which is about like families and subterfuge and war. And, it's like, wow, Watching with that is just as worthy of a book as War and Peace. And when that was something that I didn't know, I wouldn't have been able to articulate prior to writing it.
All right. So for anyone who feels that they're out of creative ideas, they're not. Just look around you, because every day, every occurrence, there's a novel within it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right. That is exactly it right there. Yep.
Where can our listeners and viewers connect with you?
It's just my name, Josh Malerman. There's one L in Malerman because people seem to screw that up sometimes in my life. I feel like Instagram, Facebook. I'm working on a silent movie now, by the way. I'm more on this some other time. But
Oh,
I'm very
yeah.
that. Oh God, it just seems like in this era of permanent opinions and flags in the sand and declarations, again, all justified, it's a little refreshing to like work on a project with no words at all. So yeah, Alice and I are working on making a silent movie right now.
Which brings us back to Evil Dead, because it's almost a silent movie.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And we saw it. It was screened during the book launch. And I was thinking the same thing the whole time. It's like he was a huge fan of the Three Stooges and Charlie Chaplin and Abbott and Costello. I know that that's not all silent. Buster Keaton and Evil Dead, and definitely Evil Dead 2 with the hand, is a combination of horror and or comedy, early silent movie era, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever. Not on Twitter anymore. Thank the gods. And definitely on Instagram and Facebook though. And also whatever. You can email me. It's just my last name at Gmail.
All right.
My phone number is 248.
All right. Thank you again so much for chatting with me. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Josh Malerman on This Is Horror. Join us again next time when we will be chatting to JC Morris. If you want to get that and every other episode ahead of the crowd, and you want to support me to be able to do as many This Is Horror podcast episodes as possible, then please become a patron at patreon.com/This Is Horror. Now, I'm doing my best to really expose people to new writers and to get new guests on the show. So whilst we do have some absolute favourite returning guests like Josh Malerman, although it was a year, so it's not like he's on every week, we want to be bringing you writers who we have never spoken to before. And if we include JC Morris, who is coming up next week, in terms of the last 7 guests we've had on the show, 5 of them have been first-time guests on the podcast. We are talking Paul Gerblish of Thunderstorm Books, Ross Jeffrey, CJ Dotson, Ryan C. Bradley, and of course JC Morris. And we've got a number of conversations with more new to This Is Horror interviewees, including Delilah S. Dawson, who I spoke to this past weekend. So if you just want to support great conversations with writers, if you want to keep the show going, patreon.com/This Is Horror. Okay, before I wrap up, a quick advert break.
It was as if the video had unzipped my skin, slunk inside my tapered flesh, and become one with me.
From the creator of This Is Horror comes a new nightmare for the digital age, The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. After a teacher receives a weirdly arousing video, his life descends into paranoia and obsession. More videos follow, each containing information no stranger could possibly know. But who's sending them, and what do they want? The answers may destroy everything and everyone he loves. The Girl in the Video is The Ring meets Fatal Attraction for the iPhone generation. Available now in paperback, ebook, and audio.
Cosmovorous, the debut cosmic horror novel by R.C. Housen, is now available as an audio experience. Featuring an original dark synthwave score, this story will take you to the next level of terror. Come hear the story that readers are calling Barker Meets Lovecraft, a phantasm-style cosmic horror adventure, and a full-bore, unflinching, nihilistic nightmare. Cosmovorous, the audiobook by R.C. Housen. Come listen if you dare.
Now, another way that you can support me is to buy my books. And my most recent book is the dark comedy Daddy's Boy. I'd love to get more people reading that, And I said on a previous episode, there's an audiobook version too, narrated by Josh Curran. If you want to listen to that, I've got a few more codes that I can give people. I think I've got about 5 codes that I can give away. So if Daddy's Boy sounds like a good one to you, and it's been endorsed by the likes of Jason Pargin, Eric LaRocca, and David Moody, to name but a few, then send me an email, michael@thisishorror.co.uk. Subject line Daddy's Boy Audiobook, and I'll help you out with that. Alright, that about does it for another episode of This Is Horror. But until next time, with JC Morris, take care of yourselves, be good to one another, read horror, keep on writing, and have a great, great day.
This is Horror Podcast.